Steve Stone if I see him. I'd love to talk to him. He played there. He was an announcer there. And they said, well, if you see him, go ahead. So I was done talking. I talked to Reed Johnson that day, and it's kind of hanging out in the Braves dugout, and Chip Carey comes out, and he and Steve Stone there catching up. I don't know how often they see each other anymore. They spent some quality years together here. And Chip Carey's kids are there, and they're kind of all catching up. And I'm looking at my watch, and I'm like, well, I know he's got to get to work soon, get ready for the broadcast. And I know that where the Sox had me parked in the parking lot, if I didn't leave by a certain time, I was going to be trapped there the rest of the night. And not that I wanted to do more than get out of there before Sox game starts. So he kind of broke away from Chip a little bit, and I said, I approached him cold. He had no idea that I was coming or anything like that. And I said, gave him my little spiel. So here's who I am and what I'm doing. I just need about 10 minutes of your time. Here's what I'm looking for. And he's kind of looking at me like, all right. So he finds a little corner in the Braves dugout and sits down. And so I turn on my video or audio recorder and I said, well, here's what I'm looking for. And I asked, didn't even really get a question out. And he talked for 20 minutes nonstop. And he covered being a broadcaster, being a player there, being served with court, with a court subpoena in the old clubhouse at Wrigley. And he was just, wasn't shocked by getting served documents, but he was shocked that somehow somebody snuck into the ballpark, got through, the front gates, got into the clubhouse to serve him in the clubhouse. Talking about when President Reagan came in to visit the booth when he and Harry in the early 80s. Hornet's nest, and spraying bugs and things flying out of the booth, and just all these really interesting things. And he went for 20 minutes and I didn't have to say anything. So he gave me more than we could have used. I could have written probably 3,000 words just off of what he had to say.
100 stories about Steve Stone.
Yeah, you could. And this is what makes him such a good broadcaster. He's a storyteller. He knows how to talk. He's written several books of his own that that's a sign of good work is when you can read something and hear that person's voice. And I think with the identifiable names in here, especially with the broadcasters, you can hear these guys talking. And his stories were just so great. And I had all this extra stuff, that I couldn't, that I transcribed that I couldn't use. And I got the audio from it, and it was just my favorite because he was one of the few people that I could kind of identify with because I feel like I've heard the stories, but I really haven't heard the stories. And it was just really strong. I think Rick Sutcliffe was another one that I kind of felt the same way because again, that was kind of my real formative years with the Cubs in '84, '89, and first night game in '88. And I actually got to interview him on August 8th last year. So on the 25th anniversary of the lights going on, I talked to Sutcliffe, and he was the nicest guy in the world. And his two stories were about the first game of the playoffs in '84, and here he is. He's trying to get ready for he was starting to understand it. He didn't just come to the team halfway through the season. He's starting to understand that this was a national holiday. The Cubs were playing a playoff game for the first time in 39 years. And so he was kind of talking about what that was like. And then some of the behind-the-scenes stuff that went on with the first night game. And to summarize it really quickly, basically they told him, wherever you throw the first pitch, they're going to call it a strike because they knew every flashbulb in the stands was going to be on him. And he says, here I am, I'm trying to get into my pregame routine, and they keep coming up to bother me with this. He's like, what do you need me to do? He said, wherever you throw it, they're going to throw a strike. They're going to call it a strike, just so you know. He's like, fine. So he gets out there, and there's a buzz, and everything. I'm sure you remember. He's kind of go back to that a little bit. So he says he throws this pitch, and it's not as close as it could be. And Eric Gregg calls it a ball, and he's livid. He's like, wait a minute, So he's like, they told me they were going to call this a strike. They wanted a strike for the pictures and all that. And so he says, later on he catches up with Eric Gregg. He says, well, Eric, they said you were going to call that a strike. He said, well, I didn't want to look like the idiot. So, it's just fun to hear those types of things from those guys, especially if you were a fan of them or you could identify, and you rooted for them as a player. So that's, those are kind of my tie for first in terms of my favorite stories.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Ronnie Wu in that book. He